To that new speaker, I'm going to introduce him and bring him on screen. It's his first speaking engagement of the year, so apparently he's bursting with some energy. As you know from our video earlier on in the piece, inspiring leaders and inspiring workplaces, we believe that empathy is one of the key pillars to great leadership. So much so that we made it one of our key criteria for the Inspiring Leaders Awards. So our next speaker, Daniel Murray, not only shares our belief, but has proved that empathy is a skill that can be learned. Through studying psychology and neuroscience, Daniel has developed a way to learn empathy, and now he helps leaders to do the same. Like us, Daniel believes that if you can understand people, you can lead more effectively, you can marshal the collective power of an organization, and with a bit of vision, you can change the world, which is exactly what we're all here to do. So without further ado, I'm going to try and bring Daniel in. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good, man. How you going, mate?
That's great. You'll have missed it earlier on, Daniel, but one of our colleagues, Stefan, who is actually the main man behind the scenes, he went down ill this morning at 6 a.m. So I am Mr. Technician and your host for the Australia and Asia leg. So I'm just glad you're here and we can hear you. Happy New Year.
And to you. And to you.
And so to that end, I'm going to bring in your deck right now as well. And I'm going to leave you be, and we'll come back in about 25 minutes. But for now, I'll hand over to you, Daniel, to talk us through your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for putting on this event. It's great, as you alluded to. I'm really excited. It's the first time I get to speak to everyone this year, and hopefully this year is going to be one that's about recovery and growth for everyone. I remember I looked out the window of a plane one day, and I knew something was really wrong. I could really feel it. It wasn't something wrong with the plane, thankfully. It was something wrong with me. I was flying back from New Zealand back into beautiful Sydney, which is a stunning place to live. I had a wonderful job. I had a great career, and my career trajectory was looking amazing. I had a great apartment, a beautiful wife. Everything on the surface just seemed perfect. But in that moment, I looked out the window and I knew it wasn't. I knew something was really wrong with me. I felt broken. I'd become a person I didn't really want to become. I was doing things that I shouldn't do. And in that moment, my whole world fell apart. I left my job. I lost my marriage. Everything started to crumble around me. And it was in this time, this dark time, that a memory came to me, a moment of understanding, a moment of compassion and empathy that spurred me into action. I'm going to tell you about that moment a little bit later on, but let me tell you about the journey that inspiration took me on. I found myself in the far northeast of Thailand, in a place called Inspirathon. There I was visiting a small home for children who'd lost their parents. And at this home, there was many children who'd suffered all sorts of horrible abuse. And when I first walked in, I met this young girl named Malik. And when I first met Malik, she was in a very, very bad way. She had large open wounds on her arms and legs. Her hair was this mess of head lice and dried blood. She'd just been dropped off by the police because her mother had died. And the only thing in the world that her mother had left her with was the same thing that took her life, HIV. Poor little Malik was in a terrible state. We went to a local doctor, and after looking over her, he said, "She's not in a good way. She may have a few weeks, months at most." I was really sad spending that time with Malik, but mostly when I was leaving, not sure if I'd ever see her face again. Now, I went back to this home just 6 months later, and this little girl came up and gave me a glass of water. And to be honest, I didn't even recognize her at first. In just 6 months, Malik had completely transformed. She's now a bright, healthy teenager who wants to become a teacher, and her future is bright. What really amazed me about this transformation in that short period of time was not just the stark growth that this young girl had gone through, but that no one at this home was at all surprised. For them, this was just business as usual. And for me, someone who's worked in the corporate world, who has all the resources at our disposal, I've never seen this sort of transformation, particularly in a place that wasn't overly resourced. So I had to really investigate. I wanted to know, how did they do this? How did this magic happen? I spent some time up in this home, living there and working with the staff. And what I found was these staff were amazing, inspiring people. This is May Dara, and her job was to cook the meals for the kids. 80 meals, 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And she always did it with this big, beautiful smile. And her attitude was incredible, and she was such an inspiring woman. What wasn't so inspiring was where she was doing her work. This was their kitchen. Those 3 rusty gas burners was all she had. There was gas tubes went along the ground, over a sink, through an open window to gas bottles that weren't secured. Most of the ventilation had been blocked off by a concrete wall outside. And when I asked her about the fan, well, it turns out it hadn't spun in years. In the middle of summer, this kitchen became an oven in and itself. And my job when I was up there was to work out if there were things that we could do to repair and to fix this home for these children. I was there working with a small charity called Hands Across the Water, and when I came back, we had just a list of things that we could do to repair. Back in Australia, we rallied up a group of Aussie guys. You can probably tell they're Australian by that big bum crack in the middle there. We gathered these group of Australian guys, and they decided they'd go over and volunteer their time and effort to help to rebuild and reshape this beautiful home. And what they did was incredible. This was May Dara's kitchen once we'd finished it. And I think you'll agree, this is a kitchen that's appropriate for him to be making 80 meals 3 times a day, 7 days a week. But when I really reflected on this amazing journey that I'd been through, none of it was about the stuff. None of it was about skills and capabilities or resources. None of it was about all of the tangible things that so often in our organizations we absolutely focus on. It was all about people. The thing that I really took away from this is if you want amazing outcomes, you need amazing people. We need to gather these groups of amazing people together. We need to inspire them. We need them to understand each other and themselves, their purpose, and the change that they can make in the world. And we've heard this before, and it all sounds good, but it doesn't necessarily happen that way. One of the biggest challenges that we find is that we talk a good game, but when we get to the corporate world, we seem to want to just chuck all of that stuff away and focus on the numbers. Particularly when times get tough, particularly times like now, times where things are, for some organisations, at a breaking point. And it reminded me of this case study of Continental Airways. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but Continental in the mid-90s wasn't doing so well. They'd gone through their second bankruptcy. The CEO at the time had such a bad culture that he had armed guards follow him around because staff wanted to confront him. And at this time, the board decided they would fire that CEO and brought in this gentleman named Gordon Bethune. Now, to say Gordon transformed Continental is a huge understatement. They went from last in every single way you can measure an airline to the best airline in the world 6 years in a row. He took their share price from $2 a share to $50 a share. They merged with United and became the biggest airline group in the world. An amazing success story. And of course, everyone was looking for, how did Gordon do it? What magic strategy did he have? What amazing resources did he manage to muster? And a young reporter actually asked Gordon, he said, we noticed you're an airline mechanic in the Navy when you were young. Was it your intimate understanding of planes that helped you turn this thing around? Gordon said, no, not really. He said, I just knew how fast I could fix a plane when I wanted to fix a plane versus how fast I could fix a plane when I didn't want to fix a plane. And he said, and that gap, well, that's where all the money was. And it sounds so reasonable when we put it like this. But unfortunately, I still talk to so many organizations and I ask them how they do their planning, how they do their strategy, and it's all based in spreadsheets and numbers. It's all based in these tangible things that we can measure and touch. But too often we ignore the most powerful part of our organization, whether our people really want to be there, whether our people feel understood. And what we know is that those who understand us have the right to lead us. If you're a leader of an organization, if you're a person who's wanting to have influence and drive in your organization, you need to understand the people you lead. Too often we think it's all about us, and it's not. It's all about them. It's all about making sure that we have that deep connection with our people. And the biggest challenge we have here is understanding people. What drives people? This is an age-old mystery, and it's incredibly difficult. Let me understand or unpack for you why it's so difficult. You see, when I think about this, business is complicated, but people are complex. And you may have heard of this differentiation between the two words, but let me make it really simple for you. Mathematics is complicated. I'm going to make a confession here. I have an undergraduate degree in mathematics. I don't usually tell people that because they'll usually stop talking to me afterwards, but it's true. I do have a degree in mathematics. And what I love about mathematics is that it is very complicated, but the beauty of it is it follows sets of rules. It's predictable. Once you understand this equation, you can manage it. You can predict what's going to happen next. It follows logic and reason. Humans, we're not like that. Humans are complex. And what I mean by that is that little things can make a big difference. For example, you send a guy to the shops to get salad dressing. You have no idea what he's coming home with. He comes back in, he's got a jar of jam and a six-pack of beer. What happened? I don't know. And this happens to all of us all the time. We spend all of this time writing detailed lists of these are the things we're going to buy, and we walk out of the shops with trolleys full of all sorts of stuff. Humans are incredibly unpredictable. And the decision-making process is incredibly complex. Little tiny things can have a huge impact on humans, or no impact at all. Really big things can have a huge impact or no impact at all, and everything in between is possible. Humans and understanding humans is incredibly challenging. And too often when we look at organizations and businesses, they boil things down to this old world thinking. You might have seen this sort of a statement that economics 101, individuals are prudent and logical decision makers to maximize their utility. It's just crazy to think we're like that. If humans are rational, how many different types of car would there be? One? Maybe we'd have a small, medium, and large. But surely there wouldn't be this huge diversity that we see. Surely you wouldn't go and change the headlights on a car from one year to the next, because that just is crazy and illogical. But it's exactly what we do. Humans are incredibly complex creatures, and how we make decisions is incredibly hard to understand. And this is why when we think about empathy, it too often gets lost in these fluffy statements, in these different ways of thinking. I really want to boil it down and make it simple. Empathy is understanding why people do what they do. It's not necessarily just how they feel. And it's certainly not about you feeling how they feel. I want to make a statement here, and I want to push on you a little bit that empathy is not walking in someone else's shoes. And the reason for this is when you walk in someone else's shoes, you have your experience in that situation. When you want to build empathy, the most important thing is their experience in that situation. And our critical point here is we need to try and understand people, particularly those who are not like us. Understanding people is hard because of this amazing thing in your head, your brain. You see, brains are amazing. 85 odd billion neurons connected through trillions of pathways. Brains are the most complex system in the known universe, and you happen to have one inside your head. How lucky are you? But the thing we need to know about brains is they're old hardware. The human brain uses very simple shortcuts. It's been designed over a long period of time, and most scientists would agree that the human brain hasn't changed structure or shape too much in about 10,000 years. Your brain was designed for a world that's much, much simpler than right now. Your brain was designed to make these things called mental models. frameworks, structures, different associations. Your brain was designed to build these frameworks up early in your life, believe that they are absolute facts about the world, and then use those to navigate through. But these mental models can actually be the trap that stops us from having empathy with others. Let me give you a really simple, maybe funny, maybe even slightly offensive example, and I hope you take no offense to this. I don't mean any offense at all. But let's just say we took a stereotypical proper English family. We took a proper English family and very Downton Abbey style, and someone was yelling. What would that mean? What would it mean if someone in this household was yelling? Well, it would probably mean something pretty serious is going down. It would probably mean tensions are high, there's some significant conflict, things are pretty tense, things are bad. And if you grew up in this sort of an environment, that's how you would think about yelling. Now let's contrast that with maybe a stereotypical Italian family. Imagine if there was yelling in an Italian household, what would that mean? Well, it might mean nothing. It might mean passionate people are having a loud conversation and getting along. And again, apologies, this is incredibly stereotypical, but the real question here is, does yelling mean something bad's going down or not? And the reality is, yelling itself means neither of those things. Almost everything that happens around us means nothing until it's interpreted by a brain. And what we need to know about each other is that we don't share the same brains. Our brains are different. Based on our childhoods, our upbringing, our experiences, our parents, the stories that we've heard, the different things that go on in our lives, our brains are configured on a set of mental models that aren't the same as everyone else. And yet your brain doesn't want to believe it. Your brain wants to believe that all of these mental models that are in your head are objective truths about the world. And the reality is, they're just your subjective beliefs. And us being able to understand that about ourselves, about our own brains, is incredibly important, because it's that pausing of these mental models, the challenging of what we think is true, the questioning of what's really going on here, that we need to be able to step into in order to build empathy. One of the things I will confess as a mathematician, maybe not surprising, is that I was terrible at empathy. Actually, I really realized through this process that I needed to change. I needed to grow, and I needed to get better at understanding other people. Now, what I thought was, if I could find a process for empathy, if I could find a step-by-step process that I could follow and train myself, I'd get better. I went searching for that process, and unfortunately, I couldn't find it. So I built one, and I want to share it with you now, and hopefully it'll be something useful that you can use to build empathy in your own practice, maybe with your teams and those around you. So step one in building empathy is what we call being consciously curious. And being consciously curious is a very interesting thing to do. It's incredibly hard to do. And let me give you an example. If I was to show you this image, what happens? Well, when you see this image, immediately your brain takes in all this information. And then what it does is it tries to work out what's going on. Now, I've worked with thousands and thousands of people using this example. And I've asked people, what are the sorts of ideas, thoughts, associations that come to your mind straight away when you see this image? And I've heard everything from sad, homeless, helpless, needs help, give them a job, give them support, right through to alcoholic, probably a scammer, doesn't need the help, dressed too well, I think she's wearing lipstick. And what often happens is we sort of sit back and we judge other people's opinions. We judge their views and how they perceive this image. But what we need to reflect on is what's actually going on in our brains when we see this image. Well, what happens when we see this image is our brain takes the image in, creates this mental model, and then starts searching through our own cabinet of ideas and thoughts as to what this is. And you'll have a whole range of different thoughts and beliefs based on this person immediately, straight away. Your brain develops this view absolutely instantly. And then we use that view, whatever it is, to then interact with this person. But I want to pause here. Your judgment on whether you think your views and others' views are good, bad, or indifferent is irrelevant in terms of empathy. All of those views get in the road for real empathy, because real empathy is understanding what's actually going on for this person. And so the first step, being consciously curious, means being aware of these mental models, but being able to actively park them. Every person you meet, you will instantly make a judgment about them based on something. But if you want empathy, you need to be able to park that judgment. And this is what we call being consciously curious, having a blank page, being okay to say, I don't know what's going on, but I'm really interested. And the reason that's so important is that step 2 in empathy is to openly explore, to ask questions, to try and really understand this person's experience. And again, I work with lots of leaders on how do you do this effectively? What are the different things that you can ask? How do you sit in this space of curiosity long enough? And just to simulate this, I want to give you an example of a story. I want to share with you Rebecca's story. It's a true story of someone who's lived on the streets. And just to give you a sense of this person and where they've come from. 2 things happened when I turned 12. My father, who used to beat the hell out of us, he left home. The other thing is I started using drugs. One of my friends said, try this, it'll make you feel better. And it did. When I was 13, my mum found a new partner. He used to beat me up, and my younger sister too. For a year, I suffered through, but when I was 14, I said to Mum, that's it, I can't take it anymore. Either he goes or I go. Mum chose him. I ended up on the streets, sleeping in abandoned houses and buildings. The only thing that happens to you in your life is you keep getting hurt. You end up saying, no, that's it. This is not going to let that happen to me anymore. I've thought about just ending it all, but I get too scared. I end up just crying myself to sleep, and it's a terrible place to be when you feel like that. You think, if I get through today, then great. If I don't, doesn't really matter. It's no big deal. Not like anyone's going to notice. To have the confidence to do something about where you are is especially hard. You have to build that confidence up. Once you've been here in the streets for a while, you've lost confidence in yourself. You think you can't do it, even if you try. Just to know that someone cares is the main thing, I guess. Most people don't have anyone. Then I found some volunteers, and they were willing to give up their time to see me, to speak with me. They listened, and it was great. And that's what people need. Someone to be there, to listen, someone that they can trust. They care about me and miss me if I don't turn up, which makes me feel really special. Now that we've openly explored, we've started to listen, and we've started to try and understand this person. Now we can move into step 3. Now we can look at that mental model that's sitting in our head, and we can challenge it. Is it right? Is it wrong? Do we need to change something about this? And once you've changed this and changed your mind, then you're in a position to lead with empathy. Now you can start making decisions to support this person. Now, at this point, when we start to have this new understanding, we also do something incredibly stupid. Let me tell you by showing you this delicious-looking sandwich. When I was about 14, I was pretty poor growing up. One day, this was my lunch, and I was so excited. This is hot chicken, roast chips, gravy, on a white bread roll, absolutely 100% awesome, zero nutrition, but I was excited. I was about to eat it. And just as I was about to eat it, a friend of mine came up. She was a good friend. She said, that's disgusting. Do you know how many chickens have to die every year so people like you can eat things like this? She gave me the big vegetarian spiel, and I was really annoyed. 3 reasons why. 1, I'm 14. I don't want to think. I just want to eat my sandwich. 2, she's getting between. I'm in love with this sandwich. She's trying to come between us. And 3, I was pretty sure last week she was eating a hot dog. Like, what was going on here? Well, what was going on is that my friend had become consciously curious. She'd then gone and explored and asked questions about animal rights and vegetarian. She'd challenged her model and changed her mind from eating animals as fine and good to eating animals as horrible and murderous. She was now up here making new decisions, leading with her new empathy, and she thought it was her job to change my mental model. How do you think that went down? I'll give you the tip. I ate the role. This is a terrible thing to do, but we do it all the time. When we find a new way of seeing the world, we tell other people how they should see the world. And right now, this point in history, there is so many people who are so sure in their beliefs trying to tell everyone else how they should believe. We need to stop. What great leaders do is they inspire curiosity in others. Think of Sir David Attenborough, one of the great environmentalists. Does he tell you to care about the environment? No. He shows you amazing pictures. He opens your world and lets you explore and make the decisions yourself. You can't change someone else's mind. Only they can do that. But you can be the catalyst to inspire curiosity in them. And this is what we need. When leaders are building understanding and curiosity and connection, work is not just personal. It's not about me. It's purposeful. It's about us. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are building this understanding. That moment when my world fell apart, that moment I remembered happened many, many years before. I was about 20 years old. I was backpacking through Thailand, and I remember being on this rattly old train as it was entering Bangkok, the wafts of smells of the city coming through the carriage. It was early morning. It was an overnight train, so early morning I was waking up and a bit groggy. As I was waking up, I noticed a woman in uniform, a Thai woman, walking down the train. She had a small wooden box, and she was collecting money from the passengers who'd had the food, drinks, meals on the train overnight. And she was putting the money in her little wooden box. Now, I had had something to eat on the train, and as she approached me, I pulled out my wallet and my heart sank. I didn't have any cash. And I was trying frantically to speak to the woman and try and explain. I mean, it was very clear that the wooden box wasn't PayWave enabled. I wasn't going to use my credit card. And I was getting really scared. Here I was in this foreign country, a stupid young poor kid who should never have been traveling. And now I'm going to be in lots of trouble. And this woman must have seen the anxiety and stress on my face because she did something extraordinary. She walked back down the train a few steps, pulled out a purse. Purse from this little compartment. She opened the purse, took out 300 baht, maybe 10 Australian dollars. She put it in the wooden box, looked at me and smiled. And as she walked back past me, just touched me on the shoulder and kept on walking. Now, I don't know how much money you make walking up and down on the trains, but I know it's not enough. It's not enough to pay for some stupid kid who can't work out his own budgets. But in that moment, she saw the opportunity to help someone in need. And it was her generous, compassionate act that inspired me when everything fell apart to journey to Thailand, to try and help the children of these orphanages and homes, to do anything I could do to help others who needed some help. And these are the moments of understanding, of empathy and compassion that our world needs now more than ever. So my challenge to you is when's that next moment? When's that next moment for you when you can see someone who needs that little bit more empathy and understanding? And you can reach out and be the leader that inspires change in their future. These moments of understanding might be small, but they can change the world. I really want to thank you all and hope you well, wish you well on your journey to bring empathy into your world and inspire that within your teams. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Wow. Yeah, thank you so much. I suppose my first question would be, because I'm a believer, I'm a convert, right? So how do you convert the people in the C-suite? You're walking in saying, I want to create more empathy within the workplace, have more leaders, people throughout the workplace who demonstrate this. How do you get them on board?
Yeah, look, it's about making sure you're meeting them where they are, right? So if this is where, coming from a background of corporate strategy and consulting, I always start with, well, what's important to them? Is it performance? Is it getting more out of the bottom line? And often that's something that, you get some pretty strong agreement around the C-suite. And I might share with them that Continental Airways example. I often work with project managers, and they'll do their Gantt charts. And I'll say, how did you work out your Gantt charts? And it's all spreadsheets, right? It's number of people, days, time, da-da-da. Okay, what if the people don't want to do the work? And they literally just look at me blankly as if to say, well, that doesn't fit in the spreadsheet. What are you talking about?
Yeah. But
if you can't manage that, if you can influence that, you have a huge opportunity to grow and change performance.
And it's an annoying question in one way, because what we're trying to do is rip up the old and just create a new world where we're actually putting this at the heart of humans at the heart of the workplace. But it is so important to get that buy-in, to get that investment, to be able to fail and fail fast and try these things and have those people that understand it. So I know that's one of the constant barriers that people who want to do good face. So I had to ask the question. I was also deeply offended by the Downton Abbey. But it is funny you mentioned that, though. Obviously, cultural differences. But I'm Irish English, and my wife is English Czech. And she says if you were to walk in on a Czech family lunch, they are shouting at one another, but having a perfectly normal conversation. So I relate to that too. The only other piece I wanted to raise, really, is the inspiring curiosity. One of the videos we were going to play, but we won't do, just so we don't rile YouTube, was from Francesca Gino at Harvard Business School. And she talks about rebels in the workplace, and that as humans, our peak level of curiosity is at the age of 5 years old. And then, so why, what question? And then it just starts to go down. So have you got any tips about how to inspire that curiosity in us?
Yeah, look, one thing I would say is start with yourself. Yeah. So, what do you believe? What's something you believe? And these are a set of questions I often ask people. So what do you believe? Yeah. Why do you believe what you believe? So what's your basis? So why is it so? Why are you so sure? Yeah. What else might be true? And getting out of your own confidence here and exploring. And often when people think about inspiring curiosity, what they're really saying is, I want more people to think like me. That is not inspiring curiosity. That is trying to get everyone to believe you. Yeah. So there's a level of vulnerability that leaders need to show here to say, okay, let's throw open the gates. Let's, anything could be possible. And really be open to exploring what's going on. And, it does involve releasing a little bit of control. And we know that so many leaders don't like to do that. But what you find is when you release the control, you're actually sharing it with others. Yeah. When control's shared by lots of people who believe the same thing and are working together, that's when your organization can be powerful and agile. If you've got to pull all the strings, agility is impossible. And
hopefully another silver lining out of this mess that we've been going through is that leaders that do have relinquished control, fantastic. Those that didn't had to, and you're seeing those more agile workforces now. So look, like nearly every one of our speakers, this wasn't something we'd asked, but we would love to get you to do a guest blog as a follow-up and maybe start some more curiosity. I think this will have sparked curiosity from people watching. It has for me. I want to ask why and what. I could speak for hours, talk to you for hours, but we must move on. And I just want to say thank you so much, Daniel. I hope to see you one day, have a beer or a coffee or whatever drink we might do. But for now, just thank you. Have a fantastic 2021, and we'll speak to you soon.